Hey, everybody. Last week of classes, how y'all feeling? Sad, bad, no. It's not that bad. Working on your project. Yeah, well. Ooh. Electricity went out 15 minutes ago. I guess it is kind of windy out. The hot spot. Ooh, nice. Squadrons for half off. Very nice. I took my index down to my parents' house and my desktop and all that and set it up in their living room. And normally we just like chill on the couch after dinner and just like veg out and watch something. Every night after dinner, we were like, hey, let's, y'all want to go play some more Beat Saber? And they're all like, yeah. I'm just like, I got you guys so hooked. My dad dropped into Half-Life Alyx and like 2 hours later was like, how long has it been? So I gotta definitely need to play through the rest of Half-Life Alyx because that game finally got its claws into me over break, and it is a lot of fun. Like one of the better shooters, I think, in VR in general. But I think I'm only like halfway through. So, yeah, well. Let's see if I can get my OBS up. Oh, my dad's internet was so bad. Like he's got a 100 megabit connection to his house, and then his router is just the regular ISP router. And it's I don't know if the DHCP is just wonky or if the NAT tables are screwed, but it'd be like everything's snappy, and then like crap, like 15, 20 seconds to load a single page occasionally. I'm just like, what is wrong with your network? All right, well, and he's got like 3 different Wi-Fi access points, but they all have different SSIDs, and they aren't even like set with the right channels, you know, so they are overlapping channels and across the house from each other. I know. So yeah, so I'm definitely going to be redoing his whole network around Christmas time. Like that's your Christmas present. I'm going to get you a router and 2 access points that can actually mesh together. And he's like, well, I have to use this router, it's the one that comes with my ISP. And I'm like, no, you just have to use the modem. Let me draw you a diagram. Yeah. So I'm actually going with the ASUS AI mesh systems. Mm-hmm. And he's got like so many devices throwing off Wi-Fi signals that he doesn't even use. Like he's got a hardware VPN thing that he uses to connect from his computer into work. And for some reason it's throwing off a Wi-Fi thing. I'm just like, you know, there's only limited bandwidth. And he's like, what? It's just air. And I'm like, oh God, I don't, just get out of the way. Just let me fix. I got some friends that went Eero and a couple other friends that went one of the other Wi-Fi mesh systems. And I'm like, yeah, but I just want something that's like really, really plug and play. Like, you know, not like you can only get any one Eero or whatever. So the Asus AI mesh is like, yeah, we work with like all these different Asus routers and all these different Asus access points. And like, what do you want to do? Yeah, we can make that work. You know, I'm just like, this is so awesome. Thank you. Okay, so this is what we're doing. Which mesh did you go with? Jeez. Yeah. Uh-huh. Top result in Best Buy's result list. Yeah. Uh-huh. Eero's nice. I just don't want it. I don't like the idea of like Eero being the core router. Like I want to have a decent core router and then have the Wi-Fi mesh actually work off of that router. Um, from what my friend's experience, he had like modem plugged into router and then an Eero is like a sub router on top of that, or the Eero was in front of the router or some crap like that. And I'm like, this is like, it's too complicated. I just want like a Wi-Fi mesh that plugs into a really good router that's got like extended NAT tables and all that stuff. So I never have to deal with your router problems again. And I was like, oh, and look, it has this USB plug. So you can plug in an external hard drive and make it like network attached storage. And he started looking for like, okay, well, let me look for, and spent like a day poking around on external hard drives. He was trying to find a good 6 terabyte one. And then eventually he landed on like, so what about these what about these whole boxes that are NASs? And I'm like, yeah, that's better. You should totally do that. I mean, then it connects over a gigabit LAN to instead of over USB 3.0, and it has all of its own stuff, you know. And so now he's like, maybe I'll actually get a NAS box for the house. I'm like, you really should. You have like 4 terabytes of photos and videos. You really need to have that shit backed up. $200 for 2.2 gigabits on 3 nodes. Yeah. I think I spent like $330. I got 2 Blue Cave access points and one of the newer Asus routers. I think it's Wi-Fi 6 compatible, which really you don't need Wi-Fi 6 for anything unless you're doing like a backhaul connection over Wi-Fi or something. But whatever, it's future proof, so now I don't have to mess with that part of his. I mean, every Christmas I go down and I fix some technical thing. Wi-Fi 6 just has super like 5 is just like AC, I think. Like the A/C/G or some, I don't know. The 5 is like the regular, yeah, GN. And then 6 is like GN plus it's got like a super wideband 5 gigahertz range, and you can use that to do like, I don't know, pretty decent like gigabit connection directly over Wi-Fi, which like no one ever needs that, especially when your outbound internet is only 100 megs. There's no reason for that unless you want like a huge, like, I don't want to run a cable over here, but I still want to get gigabit internal connections between these 2 access points. And I'm like, okay, well, screw it. You're getting 6 anyway. The Nginx Docker container. I'm going to put a Puppet Man that connects the EC2 ports to the React Docker. No. Okay, so it takes the place of your React Docker container. So when you actually get your React thing running right, I'm not going to do a bad drawing. I might type stuff up for you. Look, I'm not an artist. All right, y'all saw my digital production arts thing. Like I'm terrible at this stuff. Come on now. How do I change my Sublime window? Sublime, this one. There we go. All the better for us to learn. No, I will write stuff down, but I'm not messing with that. Come on now. And that, okay. All right, cool. What? Yeah, whatever. Bring out a whiteboard. Face Revolution was good though. Oh, come on. It was terrible. We had to actually like go into somebody else's art show and take a bunch of pictures and measurements of like some piece in their art show. So I picked a vase, and then we like one project was to model that thing and texture it and everything completely within like Maya, just based off the pictures you took. And then the next project was like, all right, now rig it and animate it and make some short video. And I'm like, oh God, this is going to be terrible. And that wasn't even the final project. All right, so I will, I guess, talk about, let me share whatever screen. Oh, no, wait, hold on. I got to do this the window projection. Ugh, that needs to come over here. Oh, God. It's everywhere. I have too many windows. What is this shit? Excuse me. Have you seen Python? Yeah, I do like Maya. I think I still like Blender more. But yeah. Meh. Nobody likes Blender. I've actually used Blender like even for video compositing before, not just for like rendering. If you like eggplant, you should try literally anything else. It's much better. Yeah. No, there's an I thought there was an upgrade for Blender that gave it like a Maya like interface. Unity's model editor, I guess, but does Unity do like actual reverse photon mapping rendering? Or do you have to import it into Maya anyway? Paint 3D. God. The trolling is strong today, huh? I do like SketchUp though. If I don't want to, yeah, tilt brush, right? Just do it all with tilt brush. All right, where are we? What are we doing today? Let's close that. Let's close that. Is getting Oscp certification worth it? Just go to CEH. I don't have either of those. So, oh. Most of the time, if it's a job that actually is decent, yeah, that's yeah. If you're at a job that's decent, they're going to like train you and pay for you to get that certification, whichever one they think you should have. Most of the time, it's neither of those. I mean, depending on the field you go into, really, but I don't know. In all the stuff I've been in, nobody's needed that. Pen testing, I would say OSCP. I don't know. It's more well known. I don't even know what CEH is. Is that like the CIS version? Oh, DOD. Ooh, I don't know. I mean, if you want to work for the government, it might be good to have both, but maybe CEH first. Ken, are you graduating this year? You looking for government work? Looking for any work that isn't front end dev. Well, at least you learned something from this class. I learned what I hated. Oh, you do it for work now. Okay. So if you want to apply to some Boz Allen positions and try and get some DoD contracts, just hit me up. I can make some referral money off of you, and also give you a referral. You know. I don't dislike front end. I just like back end parts more. Well, if you like back end parts more, then how did you just learn that what an API is? Because I mean, back end has to talk to something, and hopefully it's through an API and not by like syncing files to another server over SFTP and rsync or some crap. Because they don't teach us APIs here. They do. I am a good example that they do teach you that. Dude, I do know, because that's why like one of the reasons I'm teaching this class is because I came through and was like, So like all of the stuff I learned, none of it's being taught in class? Okay. Manual. Well, to be fair, you should learn manual pointers before you start learning the other stuff. But they should be also teaching you the other stuff. It's like you should learn Apache before you use Nginx, but you should also be taught Nginx. This is the first course I've taken at Clemson that I learned anything about interacting with APIs. Probably fair. Database class still using Adobe Flash. No, you're just trolling me, right? Please tell me they aren't using Adobe Flash. I thought it got the kill signal. They don't teach the other stuff. That's not a troll. He's correct. No, I'm not troll. Okay. God, that like now I just need to like I feel like I need to go talk to whoever teaches that class and just be like, y'all, straight. Kevin had Nemi left? Kevin Pills. Oh, I didn't even know him. He was there and gone between like when I was taking classes and now. Pliss. Is it Pliss? Oh. PHP isn't bad as long as you don't leave huge holes for code injection, which you definitely will because they don't grade around that. True. I mean, I don't really grade around code injection in Node.js either. But we don't use stuff that's actively like injectable. Like you can't do code injection to a Redis database. I guess you can do like JavaScript and tag injection, like script tag injection to the JSON database that we were using. But yeah, true. You can inject script tags, but you can't just be like Billy drop tables, you know? Okay. So, since you all have totally started on this project and you all are like, you know, very understanding of what this project is supposed to be and where all the files are supposed to be, I'm just going to do a quick rundown about where all these files are supposed to be and what they're supposed to do. And maybe I'll do another quick rundown to remind you all of the how we're doing all the Docker run. And I never did answer that Nginx thing, so remind me later when I get done with this this specific part to talk about the Nginx container and how that fits into everything. But at the top of this thing, we got app.js, right? So hopefully I'm not moving too fast for you all. I got to get my stuff turned on here because I'm not showing my code, but I'm totally like reading my code while I'm doing this. And I have to set my syntax and word wrap, and okay, that's good enough. Okay, so we got this app.js, and it's going to pull in it's going to pull in the React stuff. Which scene from The Office? I don't even remember that scene. It's been too long. So give me a rundown of what your day is like. Is that scene? Oh, of his clients. Oh, okay. All right. So you gotta like import. Y'all trying to distract me. He doesn't affect. Okay, I remember that. So we got to import React stuff like you have to do everywhere. Remember, like import React. We always have to do that because we're using the React tags everywhere. Then we got to import some stuff from React admin. And this will be like the admin, pretty much all the tags you use here. So like the admin tag, the resource tag, and you also need to pull in fetch utils, which isn't a tag, and you can tell it's not a tag because it doesn't start with an uppercase, but it's going to be used in the HTTP client, which we're going to talk about in a little second here. And then we have to pull in like the import stuff from students. That's going to be like, I don't know, the list, edit, show, create, And we do the same thing for grades. I'll talk about those in a second. Ooh, that didn't sound good. Something just blew up outside my house. Okay, I can't see anything. Not my problem. Run. Is it World War III or is it like Civil War II? I mean, seriously. At this point, I don't even know anymore. Okay, so having to run back. And then we got to import our REST client, which I think Ashton was talking about earlier today and asking good questions about. So props, mad props to that. Yeah. Okay. And then, okay, once we got that done, once we got that stuff done, we have to create this HTTP client. And this adds the base 64 encoded what is it? Token, which is the authorization header. So this is the thing that, like, whatever request you're making to the server, it rolls through the HTTP client, and like the HTTP client attaches that basic auth token. Yeah, okay. That makes a little bit more sense. And then we have to make a data provider. And we're going to pass this into the app when we make the app, but we have to make this data provider, and it's going to use our REST client. Client with an I. All right, typing. The turkey's still getting to me. And the HTTP client. Good luck figuring out how that's supposed to work. It's literally like 16 characters or something. All my requests to Project 5 students end up timing out, but all the Postman tests work. Is there some things to check to make sure the requests are going through? When you create your data providers, let's say, all right, so the data provider needs a path, and the path should just be /project 5, right? Do you have /project 5 when you create the REST client? Grades list works, which is odd. That is odd. But nothing else works. It just all times out? It should not do that. You must have broken something. Do you have, like, remember that starter file we had for REST client that just had a bunch of like these things in it? You got all those? Oh, no, it's not cores. At least if you're doing it right, it's not cores, because all this stuff should be set up to all, like, your browser gets its initial request from your IP address /project 6 and sends another request to a JSON service provider. It still didn't work. Yeah, you probably broke something. Where is my thing? All right, app. So you do have to do something like that. Are you using this as your path? And you have this HTTP client that's attaching the authentication token. Yep. And it's the BTOA version of teacher testing, basic in front of it, all that jazz. I wonder, are you using my Project 5 or your Project 5? Does your Project 5 return 401s, or does it just like break if you don't have the right authentication? But if it passes all the Postman tests, then it should be returning 401s, because that's like a whole block of tests is to be like, hey, is this a 401? Hey, is this a 401? Okay. Sounds like you're doing everything right so far, except that it's broken. So you're obviously not doing everything right so far. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna need some
Yeah.
more information on that at some point.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry to derail.
Yeah. Well, if you want to show some stuff near the end of class or like paste me some code, I can take a look at it and we can talk about it in class or after class if you don't want to share your code with other people. That might actually be a better idea
Yeah,
as
whatever
a
works.
as a concerned teacher.
All right. Thank you.
If your API passed all of the Postman tests, feel free to use it because it should work just fine for this. Actually, does your get list return anything? It could be that your database is just empty. No, that wouldn't cause a timeout. Never mind. It's just busted. All right. Get with me later. Okay. And then we make our admin object with a capital A. Add. Oh my God. How do you even spell? And then you have to pass in your data provider. Whatever, dot, dot, dot. And then you have your two resources. And then you close your admin tag. And that's all you got to do. That's the app.js. And then you got to write your students and you got to write your grades. So students is just going to export these things, right? Student list, edit, show, create. Like this. So exports those, right? And it's up to you to figure out how to write those, but that's all it does is just export those four functions. Those functions are pure functional components, so they aren't like all they aren't like whole classes for each one. It's just like, you have a function for each thing. And then grades also exports all that stuff. I don't think grade has a create or a show though, so I think it just exports those. And then grades also. Can you guys hear the background noise, or is that distracting at all? Yeah. No. Okay. Can hear it, but not distracting. Good. It's throwing off my concentration here. Okay. And then you have this. Then you have this grades list component. Student list and grades list. Okay. And I'll talk about the grade list component, but it is used. I'll get to you in a second, Zach. In grade edit. Yeah. No. Grade edit. Where? Oh, it is used in grade show. Why don't I have show in here? What did I do? This is not the right file. Oh, it's in students. That's right. Students has the yeah, okay. Text due to student simple form. Okay. So the student show uses grades list component. Okay. Seriously, I was like, wait, it's called grade list component. Shouldn't it be in the grade? No, it's called a grade list component because it shows all the grades, and you don't need that in the grades component. You need to show all the grades in the students components, and it just got all confused. Grade list component, talk about that later. And then you also have your REST client, which obviously is also used in app.js, and we talked about that about as much as I wanted to talk about it on last Wednesday. So if you got more questions about that, go watch that video, and hopefully that'll answer some questions. Okay, what is your question about the student list and grade list, Zach?
So I was rewatching your lecture from last Monday,
Mhm.
And I don't know why I didn't like think about it like at the time, but in your like when you were typing up the grades list, you were like,
Mhm.
oh, we should have row click edit on the data grid,
Mhm.
but then you decided against it on the student list for some reason. So I'm just wondering if there was a reason for that.
I think you do need, yeah, so you do need row click edit on grade the list because we aren't defining, because no, the default for row click is show, and for grades we don't have a show. So since there's no show, you need to be like, all right, well, when I click on this, go to the edit view instead. For students, we don't need that because we need to go to the show view because the show view is the thing that actually has the grade list component in it. That's not in the edit
Okay.
view.
That makes a lot more sense.
When you have time, I also have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing in REST client. Unsure how to return an object of functions and write the function mentioned. Already Googled stuff and no cheese. Did you watch the video from Wednesday? And you still have no idea what you're doing. Which part of that wasn't so? Okay. So REST client, return something like this. Okay, wait, I might not have watched Wednesday, but I watched one of them. Yeah, Wednesday was break. Yeah, you're right. So everybody has watched the Wednesday video because the Wednesday video does not exist. It would be the Monday video. I think I did REST client the entire thing. And okay, so the REST client, you were supposed to have something. So you define like export. What did I do? Let's just move this down here. Okay, so you got to like import, like however, import fetch utils, and you got to import Java server REST client. I'll go back and rewatch it if it will take too long to explain now. I'm just gonna pseudocode the hell of it real quick so I can like at least give you a rundown of it. So and then you define a function. So you do like const REST client, and it doesn't have to be uppercase, but it makes sense to REST client equals, and it takes in API. I'm just gonna copy this. Why am I retyping this? There. So it does something like that, and then you have like return, and you're just returning an object, and then that's the end of that function, and then you have to export REST client. I think it's export default REST client. Yeah. And so export default REST client. There you go. So later on, and I'll try and fill in a little bit that, but the way React admin uses your REST client, or it calls it a data provider because you pass this REST client in as the admin data provider attribute, right? So when it tries to use this thing, it's going to be like, my data provider, whatever. I guess it'd be props dot data to it, Either way, it's going to do like REST client dot and it's going to call something like, let's say it gets an event to like get one. So like got an event that's trying to do a get one call, right? So it's trying to do a get one call. And so it's got like event equals type get one resource students. You don't really have to know this, but it's useful. Like this, you don't have to write this stuff, but it's useful to know like how it's using it so you can give it what it needs, right? So it'll be like resource students, and then it'll have some other params, whatever those are. Yeah, okay. So when it when it's trying to call it, it's going to call your REST client, and your REST client is going to return this thing. It's going to return just a curly brace hash or object or whatever. And then it's going to look for whatever type is in the event. So it's going to do like event to dot type, which would be get one. So now it's using, it's called your function. Your function returned a hash. It is looking for the get one element in that hash, or the get one key, which returns another function. And then it does event.resource, event.params. So this is how it's actually using your REST client. So this part returns this thing, and then it looks in that thing for something like get one. And get one is a function, and it's going to take in a resource and params. And it's going to return a promise. That's in general how it works. So you have to define a get one key in this thing, and you have to define a get many and a get list and an update many, create, delete many, all that jazz. You have to define one of these for each one of them. When you define each one of those, they can, for the most part, anything that you don't have to override. So get one, you kind of have to override. So, you know, do stuff and like get list and what is it? Let me see what all we have. So it's get list is good. So let me just move this down here real quick. So I can paste all this. Okay. So you have get one, and then you have like same thing for get many. And then everything else is just passing through to that base client. So everything else is just like, hey, we have this base client that knows how to do a get list request. So we just do base client.get list. So base client here, we kind of broke this up into two things. Instead of doing REST client here, what we did was, what we're doing when we encapsulate is we're doing like my client equals REST client, and then we do my client of that. So that's what we're doing with this base client. And since we don't need these, don't really need to worry about what the event type is here, because we know the event name for get list is get list, because like this is what they're calling. So we just have to call the same thing in the base client. So base client, that's gives us an array just like this, right? We call JSON server REST client, we give it the API URL and the HTTP client, and it gives us an array just like this with all these key values, different code in it, but all these keys are all functions. The values for all these keys are functions, but it has a get one key and a get many key and all that stuff. So base client is just an object that has a bunch of keys in it, and each one of those keys points to a function. So if we do base client.get list, that's going to call the base client. That's going to call the get list function in JSON server REST client. And we pass in the same stuff that we were given, right? So each of these functions is given a resource and a params, and we just pass it straight through to the base client. And then base client returns a promise, and we return that back out. That is straight up encapsulation. We aren't doing anything to it. The only things you have to actually do some work in is get one and get many. Does that make a little bit more sense? You're welcome. Okay. There was another question. Right function. Blip, blip, blip. Okay. I think I'm going back to, all right, where was I? I guess I can talk about grade list component now. Is that where we're at? Grade list component. Cool. All right. So if we, where's project 6? So let's go to grade list component part of project 6. And this needs to export one default function. So the same way we did, like we made REST client and then we export default REST client, we make a grade list component, and we export default grade list component. But what is in this grade list component function that we're making, you may ask? Well, if you go to this link here, it needs to look like this. This is material UI, and it is a basic table. There's no sorting. There's no like, you can't click on anything. It at least knows the difference between like text and a number, and like actually, so numbers are right justified and text is left justified. I believe it knows. Let me make sure that I actually included that in my grade list component. Yeah, okay. So if we look at this, and hey, show the source, you say. This is pretty much what you need to make this. So let's walk through this. And it's pulling in a whole bunch of stuff from Material UI. Material UI is already installed because React Admin uses the hell out of Material UI. So we don't have to import, we don't have to npm install any of this stuff. It should already all be there. We pull in this core styles, which I'm not explaining how it works. Just use it the same way they use it. So, create a use styles. It looks weird because you're like make styles, you're calling it as a function, you're passing in some styles, and then you get this object back, and then you just call your use styles again. So you call make styles, that gives you use styles, and then you call use styles, and that gives you classes, and then you just put classes.table into this, and that's good enough. Fine, great. Don't worry about it. Create data and rows. Those don't create data uses rows, right? So what is this? What, I don't even know why. This is just to define the data that is shown here. Our data is going to come from props. So we can kind of just ignore all of this stuff, right? Because we're going to be getting something like props, and props is going to have a record in it, and record is going to have grades on it if you did your REST client right. So if we go back, let's just copy all of this so I can go back and forth in Sublime real quick. And you can do even more cool stuff with these tables. You can actually sort them, and you can select them, and you can do stuff with it. You can make dense tables. You can make sorting and selecting. You can come up here and filter based off of stuff. That doesn't work right now. Customize your tables. We don't care about any of that. I just want you to write the very basic table. Just do the bare minimum. And it 80% of the code's already written for you. Okay, so let's go back over here to Sublime Text. Let's make a new one. Can you explain make styles again? No, just use it the way they use it. You don't need to know how it works. There's whole pages. It barely makes sense to me. And I've been trying to get make styles to work. If you want to know how it works, there are just go into Material UI and try and read about make styles. But really just leave this code in there and leave this code at the top of your function, and then it gives you a classes object that you can put in here, and that's all you need. And that class is actually it does a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes to make sure that your entire app is styled correctly, or is styled uniformly. So when you call make styles, it's actually going to pull from the React admin styling. Do I have that in my code? Students, click. No, I don't have that in this currently running code. Okay. So, okay. All right. So don't need this because we're getting our data from React admin. So we can get rid of that. And we know that eventually we're going to be exporting something, but we need to make something to export. And if you do, you can do an inline export like this, as opposed to being create your REST client and then export default REST client. If you do it this way, you're going to get warnings in your yarn compile. It's not going to break anything. It's just going to be hey, you shouldn't be doing it that way. You should be defining it and then doing an export default at the bottom. So the right way to do it would be const grade list component PONENT equals, and it's going to take in, does anybody know what our component, our functional component, needs to take in? Props to Ashton. And we're just going to write a whole thing. We're not going to do like our, like in other places, we actually use parentheses and the return was implied. If we use curly braces, the return's not implied, and we actually can write code before we return, which is good because we need to put this thing in there, right? Well, let's get rid of that. And then down here, we just need to export default grades list component. And then all this other stuff, like this no longer exists. This is your file. So now you have to have a return, and you have to return some table looking thingy here. Okay. So if we go down and we read this, it's got a table container. Okay, so this is just like the square on the very outside that holds the table. Probably a div or something. Doesn't really matter. This is just the code they gave us. Then we have a table component, and it's got an ARIA label. ARIA label is for like screen reader accessibility and stuff. And it actually pulls in our class name that we created here. Great. And we have a table head, table row. So this part right here is what gives us the headings across the top. So there's no actual data in this part of our, so let's just copy this stuff up here. So there's no actual data in the header, right? Like it doesn't matter what grades we're displaying, the heading's always going to be the same. Can anybody tell me what things we need to display about a grade in this table? ID, yeah. Max. And this one's going to be grade. And what about, okay, we need type too, right? So in type, we don't want aligned right because there's, yeah, we just type as text. We just want it aligned like text. So we'll call it type. We have max and grade. And this last one, do we need to display the student ID? We do not need to display the student ID because this table is going directly onto the show view for a student. So you're looking at only all of the grades for that specific student. So there's no reason to show the type or the student ID because we know what the student ID is. And if we showed it, it would just be a column of all the exact same thing. That's non-breaking space. So non-blocking space character. It actually, like, a lot of times you can have one space between like if you're in anything other than a paragraph, a p tag. If you're in like a div tag and you're trying to set like inner HTML in a div tag, it'll no matter how many spaces you put in there, it'll only ever render one. But if you have a bunch of these instead, it'll render all of them. So it's just a HTML or XML encoding that means non-blocking space character. I don't know why they don't just have one space in here. I guess it's because they want to make sure that depending on like certain fonts that you could be using to render it or something, or if you wanted more than one space, you do stuff right. But it's weird because they don't have it here. So I don't know why they have this stuff here. Maybe it's just to prove that like you can put this sort of thing in the middle of it. In any event, this ends up going into an inner HTML of some actual HTML element that is the table header cell thing. Okay, so this is what our header is going to look like. And we only have one row in our header. It kind of makes sense. We don't need a header that's got like 2 rows, right? So that's the end of our head tag. At the bottom, we're still going to have to close out our table tag at some point. And we're still going to have to close out our table container tag at some point. And actually need to do like that to close it, right? There we go. Okay. And we need a table body. We need to close our table body with an actual close tag. Okay. So how do they do their table body? Okay, well, somewhere they get rows. So their rows came from, let's go back to the browser for a second and see what they had before I deleted it all. So create data. Where do they use their create data? They don't actually use, how do they not use create data? Why is this even in here if it doesn't do anything? Or am I just missing it? Row name. Yeah, okay. Well, that's great. They don't really have a create. It's above the function declaration. Oh, they're using it here. Oh, in the row definition. Yeah, okay, so they could have just had like a curly brace in each one of these rows. They could have just had this in each row, but for some reason they pulled it out to a separate function call. Why? I don't know, but don't have to worry about it. Just so they have these rows defined, just hard coded, and it's accessible, not globally, but it's accessible in the scope that this function, this basic table function, was written in. So down here, they can just do rows.map, and that will say like, all right, we're going to do something for every row in this array. So array.map, if we go map JavaScript. Yeah, okay. So if we look at this, creates a new array populated with the results of calling a provided function on every element. So it rolls through every element in the rows, right? And it calls this function. What function? It calls this function, which takes in that row, and each one of those returns a snippet of React admin. And so then this table body has an array of React admin, or of React snippets, of JSX snippets. And all that works fine. You can have an array inside there perfectly fine. So this function here is just supposed to return one React row, one Material UI row for every element that you're trying to render a row for. Okay, well, that's all well and good, but where's our grades on the student, right? So inside props is going to have a record on it. So props is going to have a ton of stuff. It's going to have like styles. It's going to have whatever other stuff you passed into it, and whatever other stuff React admin passes into it. But React admin will give you a record most of the time. It will most of the time give you a record. So it does some stuff called optimistic rendering, where it will send off a request to get the singular student object that you're trying to do student show on. And while it's waiting for that request to come back, it'll go ahead and try and render everything as an empty view, and then roll back through it later and re-render it when it gets the data from your get1 in React client, REST clients. So we have to be a little careful. We can't just trust that props exist. So like the naive way would be like, okay, well, we could do const record equals props dot record, and this will totally work all the time. I mean, this might end up occasionally being null or undefined, so record would be null or undefined, but it's not going to cause any errors, right? But inside this record is what you get back from your get1 call on students. So this is going to have things like the student's ID, the student's name, and because you added some extra code, this is why we overrode that REST client, right? This REST client doesn't just call get1, doesn't just call the get for student slash whatever, student slash Craig B or whatever. It calls that, and then it also calls something to, and this is the code that I put into Slack for Ashton earlier today. It also, once it gets back that student object with the ID and the name on it for Craig B or whatever, it does a subsequent call to get a list of all the grades that student owns. And so that's why we have to override it, because we want to have not just the name and the ID, but we also want to have a .grades inside that thing. And that .grades needs to have all of the grades that student's ID is associated with. So if we go back over here, we don't just need record, we need grades, right? Const grades equals record dot grades. And this is where the naive approach will kick you in the butt, because the first time, if it's doing optimistic rendering, record isn't going to exist in props. And so that's all well and good. That code works great, but then you try and do undefined dot grades, and that's going to throw like an error, and it's going to break everything. So you have to kind of make sure that these things are, at least if you don't get them back the first time through, like most of the time when it's actually working right and when you actually have data to render, record.grades and props.record are going to exist. But if they don't exist, so if this thing returns anything that looks like false, then instead set record to this empty object. And if record.grades returns anything that looks like false, that's, remember, just the double equals, not a triple equal, because we're not casting or anything. This is just like, is undefined falsy? Yes. If it returned, if there was false in here, this would also kick this off. If this were just like a string ASDF, it would not kick this off, and it would break your code because we're expecting grades to be an array. So that'll never happen unless you write your get one code terribly. But this is a little bit of safety catch to be like, okay, create your record, and also if it doesn't, like pull a record out of props, and if it doesn't exist, set it equal to that. You could conceivably do this with an if statement, but if you did it with an if statement like this, and then be like, if not record equals, that's going to break too, because this is a const. You can't overwrite it. You can't have record on the left hand side of an equals again, because it's a const. So then you have to change this to a let, and it makes all of your code slightly less safe, because then you can like possibly accidentally overwrite record or grades or whatever. So the way to keep it being a const, living life on the edge, I know, right? So the way to keep it safely being a const and still make sure that everything is good is like this. You could conceivably also do a ternary statement. So you could do like not that question mark. So if not that, then return this. Actually, wait, hold on. So this is even longer form. So props, this is a ternary statement version. So if you do like if props.record, then props.record, else this thing. I mean, that's you have to type props.record twice. I mean, like, I'm super lazy. I much rather prefer just using this double or syntax. Cool. So now we have this grades, and grades is an array, and it's an array of objects, and each object in that array is going to have like an ID and a type and a max and a grade and all that fun stuff. So if we go down here and we grab this table body code, we could even, if we really wanted to, we could call this rows. I know, right? And then inside here, we just need to make sure that we're putting the right stuff in here to match what's actually in the things that come back from a regular grades list call. So the same stuff that comes back, that we made our table on, it'll have like a .id, it'll have like a .type, it'll have a .max, and it'll have grade. And not all these need to be right. Sometimes if it's just text, it needs to be regular left. And that's pretty much the entire grade list component, I think. Isn't it? Table cell component. Why is that a table header? I don't remember. Okay. Yeah, that's default props label grades. Yeah. So this just, might need that little extra thing in there just in case. And this specific part comes from, if you go read how to write your custom React admin components, they say that sometimes you should put like default props on there. So this just says like, hey, if props doesn't have a label, then give it a label. And I don't think we actually use the label anywhere in here, but whatever. This is pretty much the entire grades list component. Now, how would one include this component in their, what about row.name? Oh yeah, that is ID. And then I had those three. Yeah, you're right. That looks more. And then table key is row.id. Yeah. Yeah, that would break stuff. I mean, it wouldn't break anything because row.name would just return undefined and you just have like undefines in certain columns, but this is the correct way to do it. You're right. Good catch. Any questions about how I got from that React table component tutorial to this thing? Does rows.map kind of make sense to y'all? Are you just gonna like trust in the material UI gods that they gave you good code and just carry on? Yeah, YOLO. Okay. So now we've exported this thing so we can pull it into our grades component. And I mean, our not grades. I keep thinking it's in grades. It's not in grades. So our student show. If we import this grades list component into our student thing, then somewhere we can do something like this. And we just drop grades list in there. And we say the source is the grades tag or the grades key inside the props. And that's pretty much it. Now you have a grades list in your show view. So any questions? Because that's like all I had to talk about today. Nginx. Right. Okay. Okay, so we had all that stuff. All right, so here's like the process, right? So you got like your Docker run React container using React image. And there's, all these tags and stuff like that. Docker run -rm and all that other stuff. But at the very end, you want to do something like /bin/bash. And this is like when you're first getting started. And you're going to cd to / and you're going to run npx create React app, call it app, and it will writes into /app. If you don't cd into root first, then this is going to write into /app/app. And that's not preferred. Not exactly what you want to be doing. So you have to, because if you made your container right, whenever you run bin bash, it should drop you into /app, right? And you don't want stacks on stacks. You don't want apps on apps. So yeah, Docker run and then that, and then you can just like exit, and then you have to do like, because when you do a Docker run and you do bin bash up there, it's going to run everything as root inside the container, which means that all of the stuff that create React admin made is now owned by, and this does not need to be uppercase, everything that create React admin made is owned by root even in your host operating system. So you have to do something like sudo chown -r Ubuntu, and then path to app folder. This is just like your project 6 /app or whatever. Then you can do another Docker run. And all this stuff. And then you want to do yarn start. And this is going to be like building, compiling, complaining. And then it'll say like, hey, it's available on localhost :3000. This is a lie. It is not going to be available on localhost :3000. It is available inside the container on localhost 3000. But remember, part of your flags inside this Docker run, one of the flags is saying, hey, map port 3000 to 3003. So it has somewhere inside of it -p 3003 3000. What this says is it says take 3000 inside this container and run it on 3003 on my host operating system. So your host OS Nginx, this is the one we've been using all year, not your container Nginx, your host OS, the thing that's in your actual Ubuntu server. Host OS Nginx has a location project 6 proxying to port 3003. Docker what does it do? Docker runs, I guess it holds 3003, and any requests sent to it goes into your container on port 3000. So it's like you have in the container 3000 on your OS 3003 from Nginx just /project 6. Does that make sense how we're kind of hopping? But that doesn't answer the question about what the Nginx thing actually does. So, the Nginx container. So you write good code. Code now works, and you are ready to submit. Then you'll do a Docker. You'll do two things. You'll do a Docker run, all the same stuff as above, and you'll do yarn build, but it's not going to be uppercase, build. And this generates a, what is the path? Where's my code? Let's see, project. 1 second. I got to find it. I think it's build. Yeah. Build directory with your React app compiled into static HTML, CSS, JS files. So build your build folder, and this will be like /project 6/app/build. And this will have a bunch of stuff in it that will just be like almost unreadable HTML, CSS, and JS files. They're minified, they're built, they're all that stuff, but that is like your compiled version of your React app, your React admin app even. So that should exist on your operating system after you do that Docker run, blah, 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 yarn build. And then when you're ready to submit it, Docker run Nginx, the same -p with, needs to run on 3003 externally, and it needs to go into port 80 inside the container. And then you need to do a mount. So you need to mount something into var www HTML project 6. And this will be like some path on your OS. And project 6. Okay. So, and then you're going to tell it to run the Nginx container, whatever. Like, this is totally pseudocode. You're going to have to figure out the actual Docker run command yourself, but these are the important parts. But what this is saying is you're going to run the Nginx command you built, which I think this needs to be at the end. And then you need to have like Nginx -g, whatever. I think I had this part in the project 6 description, didn't I? Yeah, hey. There you go. So I gave it to you. Okay. So you're running a container. You're telling it to delete itself when it's done. You're telling it to run in daemon mode. So it's not going to sit there and say what it's doing and take up your bash terminal. It's going to run in the background. This is like running as a service. You're going to call this container Nginx. It is going to mount a volume, and it's going to mount the volume from your Project 6 build directory into your container at this path. Remember, like we've already used Nginx. We know that it uses the var www.html directory, and we want to put it into the Project 6 subdirectory of that. We're telling it here to use the Nginx image. So this is the name of the container. This is the name of the image. And then this is the command we're running inside that container. So we're actually running the Nginx process in the foreground of the container, and we're telling it to turn its daemon off, because if there's nothing running in the foreground of your Docker container, it's just going to immediately exit. So you can't do like a service start inside your container to make it run Nginx. You got to tell it to run in the foreground, which is like doing npm start. So this is the equivalent. This is like doing npm start, but for Nginx. And it does that in the foreground of your container, but your container's running in the background of your host OS. Okay, what that means is now port 3003 points to port 80 inside your Nginx container, and that serves up your built Project 6 stuff. Remember, host OS Nginx is still sending slash location slash project 6 to port 3003. There. So we didn't want, and so you have to, but this is a little extra. There are two ways to do this. We could have taken these built files, and we could have put them directly into our var www.html project 6 on our host OS. And we could have had our host OS Nginx serve them up. To do that, we would have had to remove our project 6 location. Because if we go look for project 6, like we're developing it up here, project 6 proxies to port 3003. Down here, if we were to put files in var www.html project 6 in our host OS Nginx, those files would never get rendered, because anything that's trying to go to project 6 is going to get proxied off to port 3003. So we have to run a second engine. We have to figure out how to put those files and have them hosted on port 3003 so that our main Nginx actually still gets all those files correctly. And also, so there are two ways to do it. We could have removed that location block when we're ready to submit it so that Project X just goes back, or Project Nginx, Project 6, bleh, so that just goes back to looking at var www.html project 6. I prefer, and the requirements for the project is, and I made it this way, I wanted you guys to learn a little bit more about Docker. So we're running a second Docker container. So we're running two Nginxes, one that's actually on port 80 of your host operating system, and it's forwarding to port 3003, which goes into a Docker container, which then translates it back to port 80, which then gets served up, which then serves up your build stuff. Yeah. Need a visual image. Well, I'm sorry. I guess that's all the time we have for today. Look at the time. I guess I don't have time to draw stuff. But yeah, Wednesday, I will not be doing that. Wednesday, I will be talking about the final, which I kind of still have to like write. So go meet on that, and answering any final questions on the project. And that's pretty much all we're doing Wednesday. I might, is it open notes? It's whatever the midterm was, except I might actually let you go back and re-answer questions. but yeah, okay. What was I gonna say? It is not open notes. Oh, no, I lost it. That's all I got. Image. I'm not gonna draw stuff. You're crazy. All right. When I Oscp, I get permission denied error. I haven't had it since the first project. Not really sure what I'm getting, why I'm getting it now. That's because after I would assume you did you did this create React app thing, and then after you exited your create React app, those files are owned by root. So you're going to have to like chown. Oh God, extra. Why? Okay. No, there may be, if you're lucky, there might be an extra credit quiz tomorrow, or Wednesday, whenever we have class. Wednesday, there might be an extra credit. What's the student we have to create after Postman test? There should be a Craig B and a C Baker. I think Postman tests create 2 students and then deletes one of them. So yeah, you need to make the one that it deletes. I forget which one it is, but just run the Postman post to create whichever one that thing had deleted. Extra credit project? No. Extra credit quiz? Maybe if I get around to writing it. Otherwise, you'll just have to come to class on Wednesday for no reason. But it won't hurt you. Do the timestamp EC still stand? What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Possibly extra credit. Is our final exemption based on our grade before project 6th grade? Nope. Your project exemption is based on your actual project 6th grade. So if you want to know if you exempted, maybe turn in your project 6th grade before like 11:58 on Sunday. The timestamp you asked to, oh, yeah. Yes, you only get one. You only get 1 point. I believe it was on the midterm. It's whatever the Slack message said, like, give me a couple of different, like, in a video, pick one video, give me like 3 to 5. Craig talked about this at this thing. And I believe it was like, if you have less than an A or less than a B on the final, I don't know, go back and read the Slack thing. You only get 1 point, so only do one video. If you've done one and I haven't told you I gave you a point, I think at least one person did one, and I didn't give them a point. And or at least I didn't get around to it yet. I told myself I would do it eventually, but I haven't. And also, it's a point on your midterm grade, which is like half a point on your midterm and final grade or something like that, which is like a quarter of a point on your total grade. I don't know how that works. Yeah. And Lily, I'm still trying to grade your project 5, but it wasn't working, and tried sending you a Slack message, but no worky. So calling you out in class. And that's all I got for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And hit me up in Slack if you have any questions.
Thanks, Craig.
No problem. Have a good Monday.
You too.
The final is, I think, 6 to 9 or something on Tuesday. I don't know. They just assign it based on, like, if your class was Monday, Wednesday, 4 to 5:15, then this is when your final is. So just Google what time Clemson finals are. Yeah. All right. I'm out. Hit me up if you have any more questions. Bye.